How's everyone doing? This is DB, and this is the third installment of DB After Dark. It is July 6th, 2016, 2 days after the celebration with fireworks of Freedom Day, and today there are not one, but count them two, African-American men who have been shot and killed by police. Everybody knows the story about Alton in Baton Rouge. Basically a guy that was, trying to sell CDs out of a convenience store. And I don't know who called him, and I don't know what for. Those things are still coming out. But they were heavy-handed with the guy, and they tried to wrestle him to the ground. And, while they did their semi-pat-down, found a gun in his pants. No eyewitness said he was reaching for it. And before we go even further down the rabbit hole, let me introduce my co-host, L. Deeds. L. Deeds, how are you doing?
Never better. If sarcasm isn't apparent, it should be. I don't want to say heartbroken. Emotion doesn't really have a place when we should be coming to a point of steely-eyed resolve. But I'm scared, and I'm worried, and yes, my heart is a little bit broken.
Yeah, this Alton Sterling, well-known now, breaking news story that's going on, and this is a cold blood shooting. There's even more, if you can stomach it, graphic footage. This is breaking news. This is up in our neck of the woods in Falcon Heights, Minnesota, is where this was broadcasted from, and apparently it was the Roseville Police Department of Minnesota. You can go on Lavish Reynolds on Facebook. You can just look her up, and the first video was a live stream, Facebook Live, that basically graphically showed a guy that was gunned down in his own car multiple times and died right on. It's all on video. It's the craziest thing.
I just want to check how you're confirming what happened to the man who was shot.
Well, he passed out. So he was shot 4 times. He looked like he was deceased, essentially. As you look at the video, I was an EMT. I'm not going to say I'm an expert by being an EMT. But I'm just saying that when you get shot like that, where the guy's arm was obviously hit in places that hit an artery, where his whole chest was blood-soaked, and we don't know who this guy is. I'm finding out that this is actually Lavish Reynolds' daughter, Diamond, who must live here in this area, and that was her boyfriend. And this is, by the way, this is very rare in Minnesota, except for recently, because I looked into it. Did Minnesota have a problem with the police being brutal here? Now, they've gotten complaints. There's no doubt they're heavy-handed in areas, and in the Twin Cities area especially, the crime's concentrated, but we don't have endemics of shootings and violence here in the Twin Cities. Not really. There is, but it's concentrated, like I said. And for this to happen in Roseville, which is kind of a suburb, and it's a middle-class area, and it's not used to that kind of stuff happening. This is crazy stuff. The guy does not look old at all. He looks like a young guy. She's saying on video that he was ordered to produce identification, and he was ordered to produce his registration, and they were both in his wallet, and he reached for him. The guy said, "Don't reach for him." And the guy said, "But they're in my wallet. How am I going to give you the paperwork?" So he reached for him again, and the guy shot him. And this is what this Diamond is saying all on video. It's crazy stuff, and we'll find out more. It's breaking, so I know, Elle, you're a great researcher. Maybe you can figure out Roseville PD or something has any information, but crazy, crazy stuff. And so it's not one but two in the same day. Jeez.
Well, per my research, DB, there is a nuance that's not part of what you said, which is apparently he was proclaiming himself to have a concealed weapon and had to have a permit to have it. And it's my understanding that's why the officer, I guess in theory, would be on the passenger side of the car, for one thing. This man was the passenger, not the driver. And two, would also not explain, but it puts context, I suppose, around this horrifying gunning. I don't know if this man is dead, but it's plain he's desperately hurt in this video.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, it looks like a little girl picks up the phone as time goes by, and then the lady's in police custody, and we'll find more out if we can. We're gonna have a special guest call in about 3 minutes. Asa Gregroy, L. I know this is a contact from some of the open and primary activities that have morphed into a new project that you're going to go for. You can talk a little bit about that. And we can talk about some things that on the surface appear to be disappointing as time goes on, like the fact that Hillary wasn't indicted, but the notion that maybe the foundation itself may be targeted. We can kind of go over that. And then also we can delve more into this endemic rash of police shootings. It's just ridiculous. What else has been going on that's very, very important to you? We see that a guy in the Navy, I guess, passed one unclassified document, the Marines, and was booted, and now another guy's gotten like a 4-year term. We know Chelsea Manning apparently tried to commit suicide, and we can talk about that later. But what are we going to go over with Asa?
Are you asking if Ace is on the line? I don't know if that's what.
Ace is not on the line. He's going to call in a couple minutes, I think.
Got it.
But what are we going to be making the primary focus what we go over with him?
Well, Asa is a delegate alternate from North Carolina and an activist. So what I'd like to discuss with him is the journey he's taking as an alternate delegate, and I mean that not only in the context of the self-education required, but what kind of support is forthcoming from the campaign. It would be naive to not acknowledge that there's been a change in messaging, most definitely. I'm not hearing we're fighting to the last moment of the convention type rhetoric, at least not this week. So, I mean, you know where my loyalties lie, DB. So I'm in no way trying to troll, as they say, or bring down anyone who's a Bernie believer, shall we say, who might be listening. But it's a very confusing time. I suppose that's a logical response when you're confronted with incontrovertible, unassailable proof that what some of your friends on the earlier program have been talking about for years, i.e. the utter disenfranchisement of anyone who's not in the ruling class and the oligarchy that we inhabit. It would be naive to not acknowledge that. And not to lay all that on Ace's door, but I would like to discuss his experience going to the convention as an alternate delegate in this, in light of all of this.
Well, Ace is calling in now, so we're going to get him on the line here. All right, I think we're back on air. We're going to give Asa a call here, and I think that'll work a little bit easier. Let's see here, L. And let's add him on. And here he is. Asa, are you online? Whoop.
Hello.
Hi, Asa, are you on the line?
I sure am.
Hi, Asa. This is DB with DB After Dark, and of course, I'm joined by our co-host L Deeds, who's actually been kind of, I guess, introduced to through a mutual friend in Open the Primary activities.
Yes.
L, would you like to kind of take the lead here? Well, you're not. I'm not hearing you. Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Now we hear you.
Yep.
Oh, lucky us. Hi, Asa. It's really nice to hear your voice again. How are you?
It's good to hear yours. I'm doing pretty well. Glad to be on. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I know we didn't really summarize what we'd be talking about, and I don't want to just throw you soft, mushy balls to catch.
Right.
Not maybe on Friday, but not tonight. So
Right.
The question is sort of, can you talk about what it means to be, first of all, an alternate delegate?
Sure. I posted a video earlier because I was appealing to my friends, strangers, family, whatever, to donate to a fund. And I'm not alone. There are almost 2,000 or maybe more of us if you include the alternate delegates. And in that video, I said it's an honor, and it really is. It was also a surprise to me because I put myself up as a candidate on the district convention level, but I was at my niece's graduation from the University of Maryland, and so I couldn't speak on my behalf, and I lost the election at the district level. So when someone messaged me on Facebook and said, "Hey, we're putting you in as a alternate delegate," I was like, "Oh, okay," it was a surprise, and I won. I found out by email after the fact because the Democratic Party always pushes the time on our state executive committee meetings, our state conventions. Always, they run so long, and I'm one of my biggest pet peeves is efficiency. So it really always drives me crazy. But I found out by email I won, and then I got the details about how much it's going to cost. So there's that.
So there is that. And for those of us not inside the process as you are, or for myself then I'll speak, how does it work where you're obligated to cough up? Now, how much is it exactly and for what exactly?
Well, now there is we talk about loopholes for corporations to locate their businesses offshore. There is a loophole for us delegates. They have a waiver form where I just absolutely said, no, I'm not going to stay at the delegation spots at the hotel. I'm not going to pay $500 so I can rub elbows with fellow Democrats. I mean, that's just BS in my opinion. Because it would basically, it requires a deposit like almost immediately. Like our state convention was June 11th. And the first deposit was due like June 30th. So that's like a really quick turnaround. And for a lot of people who are like working class, 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, teachers, whatever, they can't afford to like chunk that out. I mean, it's like a mortgage payment that they're putting in as a deposit for the hotel. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to figure it out. I always said that I would go. I heard you mention me as an activist. I said, I'm going to go to Philadelphia, even as an activist, and if I have to, I'll sleep in my car. So I was prepared to do that. So I was, it didn't take much for me to waive and give up my reservation in the hotel. But for some people, they don't necessarily have that luxury because they have families and things like that. So.
Asa, I'm going to ask you to repeat the amount of the deposit you were expected to come up with for a hotel room.
Okay. I mean, it was essentially like I compare it to a mortgage payment for a lot of people. If I were to guesstimate, I would say it was close to $1,000.
Okay.
Because the prices for that week, because of course how capitalism works. If there's a big event in town, the hotels can they can jump their prices up by like 5,000% or whatever, and so all the hotel prices have just jumped up because of the convention, and of course the neither the state nor the national party are going to subsidize that for any of the delegates doing the party's work. So yeah, it's a huge chunk of money it's a big burden on delegates, and it's part of the whole party system that I have a problem with. And I've been a lifelong Democrat, and I've for many years been a proud Democrat. This year changed that. So.
Yeah, I think you speak for a lot of people with those simple remarks. But I guess I'm just trying to understand where that money is meant to go. Presumably, or let me ask, a specific room is being booked in a specific hotel for you in your name, and they need this exact amount of money to get it done, or is there some ambiguity about how much they're asking you for?
I mean, I think it's split, and it depends on whether you're getting there are different parameters. Like if you want your own room to yourself, or are you going to have two people and things like that. So of course the price increases if you are looking for privacy. But they're basically asking for like half of it at the end of June and half of it in the middle of July, a couple of weeks out from the convention. So that's at least the hotel. Now, beyond that, I don't know the costs. I am just aware, based on the forms I saw, of the hotel costs.
Can you talk a little bit about being a delegate for Bernie Sanders, essentially a Bernie-crat, in North Carolina, of all of the places? Because, yeah, we know it's not South Carolina, but still, I mean, you've got to be a needle in a haystack, right?
Well, I'm not quite the needle in the haystack as you might think. There actually are a lot of progressives in North Carolina. And I'm sure you've been paying attention to how North Carolina has become the South Carolina. Like, we're worse than South Carolina on a lot of issues, like including teacher pay. And that's because of the 2010 takeover of the GOP, the legislature, and they have regressed our state so much. But yeah, essentially I am. I mean, I think my county maybe went 30% for Bernie. So if that gives you a glimpse into at least my county. But there were counties like Orange County and Buncombe County, Watauga County, and the last two were in the mountains that actually Bernie won. So there are pockets of progressivism here in North Carolina. But yeah, it's difficult being especially in my home county, because everybody's ready for Hillary and they can't understand. Like, they used to respect me like I said, I was a proud Democrat, and I was a very active Democrat and fighting for what I believe to be democratic values, the people's values. And now, because they're all Hillbots, basically, they look at me with my Bernie shirts and my radicalism, and they're like, ew, I don't want to go near him. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's definitely like being a pariah.
And that's so ironic, too, because now, because of the pressure he's putting on the party, she's going to start, actually endorsing a lot of his platform. A lot of his crazy Bernie ideas are going to filter into this party just as a way to appease this huge voter bloc. And a lot of these Hillbots are probably already having a rude awakening that today Comey came out and basically all but said we would, if she was anybody else, if we weren't afraid for our own lives, maybe, she would be behind bars right now, or at the very least indicted, and here we have a double standard. So, yeah, I think a rude awakening is on the way.
Right. Go ahead.
I just wanted, before we go down this road, there's a lot of roads to go down. I wanted to follow up with you in terms of the campaign's outreach to you, if any, or your outreach to them, if that's how it might work.
Nothing for me so far, because I've had people tell me, like, hey, you're fundraising, reach out to the campaign. I know I've received emails that say, we've got all these delegates, please give, like right before June 30th, our fundraising deadline. And they're highlighting the need to give money and get our delegates to Philadelphia. So I know they're raising for that purpose, but I have hesitated to email, and I'm not sure why. Like, it's just a gut something. I probably will email the campaign, but in terms of outreach from the campaign, I think I received an email from a regional coordinator, and I can't remember the name offhand. But they basically asked me to fill out a survey. How's your fundraising going? What's your link to your fundraising site? And so I filled that out, and maybe that's why I have hesitated. Of course, also another reason I've hesitated is because I didn't get a job working for the Bernie campaign here in North Carolina, because our state coordinator, as I call her, was a paid plug. She's a Hillary supporter who got hired as a state coordinator for Bernie's campaign. So I have to tread lightly with Bernie's campaign, because there are infiltrators throughout the campaign. And with that information known, you should look at the body of accomplishments of Bernie's campaign and think, wow, he had not just election rigging and voter suppression, he had infiltration from the Hillary campaign, and he did as well as he did. Like, minus like even one of those factors.
Hi, Maggie. Sorry.
Sorry, am I interrupting? I'm at a cheesecake factory. One sec, let me get outside.
No problem.
Well, I wonder if we should schedule a few minutes after your appetizer's done. I mean,
oh no, I'm like, sorry, I was out with the attorneys. We were, kind of blowing off some steam. Sorry, you guys, to like interrupt. Right, I was hoping I would get you guys right after your first guest, and I was like, I probably have a little bit of spare time, so. But yeah, no, sorry about that. I'm here.
I'm sure Asa might even want to know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, bring it on.
Asa, this is Maggie O'Neill. You might have seen her streams in the past couple of days. She's been protesting and taking legal action as part of an activist group, and Maggie will fill in these important details for us. But she's someone who's been in San Diego attempting to observe the ballot, documenting what the outcome has been of that, and bringing legal action. And as she said, she's with attorneys at Cheesecake Factory right now.
Yeah, we just wrapped up at the Cheesecake Factory because that's, what all high-powered hors d'oeuvres entail. Yeah, we just had a preliminary hearing. The judge didn't rule in anybody's favor because he did mention he's very overworked. The civil cases in San Diego, there's 11,000 or 1,100 for each judge. And he was like, you guys should contact your elected officials. And I laughed I was really quiet the entire time. I laughed really hard at that because I have been contacting my elected officials, or at least California elected officials. And as you can see, Alex Padilla, literally ran away from me when I was like, hey, what are you going to do about all these election code violations? WTF, except without the F. And he literally ran away from me because he has no interest in making sure we have free and fair elections in San Diego. Michael Vu is just the slimiest of the slimy. He has a history of election. He's been indicted for election fraud in 2004 in Cuyahoga County in Ohio, and we all know what happened there. Bush won. So he's throwing elections pretty much to the highest bidder. And when I called, when I was advised by this Duraka, I forget his last name, but he's running for vice chair of the Democratic Party of California. And I was like, anytime anybody endorses the candidate, online or in any of the San Diego Bernie groups, I'm just like, what are they doing to help the ballots be properly monitored and counted? And every single time I tried to talk to one of these Democratic, potentials, they're like, oh, well, you need to contact the registrar of voters. I'm like, nope, done that. He's very corrupt. Who's the next person I contact? And they say, oh, contact the Secretary of State. And so I called the Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, several times, and I kept being redirected to his executive assistant. I believe his name is Chris or Nick. I can't remember.
Nick.
I think it's Nick.
Nick.
Yeah, it's Nick. And I was redirected to Nick because I immediately called the office, and they were like I said, I'm reporting election fraud, and they redirected me to Nick. And I was talking to Nick, and he was like, I think I brought up, I was like, hey, they're not letting us in, they're not letting us in to watch ballots. They have this state-of-the-art facility that was just remodeled, I guess. And they've got they're about 3 rooms where they're remaking ballots, they're processing provisionals, and then they're sorting them for storage. And then there's a tabulation room, and they're all about the size of a very small gymnasium. They're big rooms, and they're saying, and only one wall is glass. And they're saying, well, that's plenty of observation for the public. The public doesn't need to get any closer than that, which I knew was bullshit because I'd been to LA County and I'd watched ballots be processed there. And you can get up right behind every single ballot worker so long as you're not touching election materials and you're not bothering the workers, you're good to go. But, the fact that, and this was after the lawsuit, they were barring us access. So we had teams of volunteers, working in shifts, watching them count ballots. And they were doing every dirty trick in the book. We knew that they were processing ballots up until about 9:30 at night. And I would send, or, people would sign up because we had shifts scheduled until, late in the evening. And one time we had a young man who was brand new, didn't know quite what, all of his rights were, didn't totally know exactly, because, it's just a ton of information is being thrown around. And he went up to the registrar of voters and he knocked on the door. It was locked, and they came to the door and they said, "Oh, we're closed." And this was about 3 weeks ago. And he was like, "Well, I signed up with this activist group, and they told me that you guys were going to be counting ballots until 9:30 at night." And they're like, "Oh, we're not counting ballots. We're closed. We're closed. We're closed. We're closed," and kept giving him the strong arm. And so, obviously he texted me and my friend Emilio, and I was livid because apparently what he had said was, "I'm here to count ballots." And they knew what he was there for. They knew he was there to observe them processing, provisional envelopes or whatever stage of the process they were in. And, but they just kept telling him they're closed, they're closed, they're closed, and barring him access. So I pulled up with about 3 or 4 of my other friends, in Bernie van, and we screeched to a halt and we ran inside and we're like, we know you guys are counting ballots. You need to let us in. Just because he said, because they weren't allowing him access because he said he wanted to count ballots, not I want to observe you guys processing ballots. So as early as the day or two after the election, they were doing shady stuff like this. And after we sued them because they weren't including provisional or late vote by mail ballots in the 1% manual tally, which is how you make sure that the machines are not being tampered with and the machines are doing their job. By the way, Michael Vu used to be a salesperson for Diebold, which are these optical scanners that everybody uses now to, count ballots in the election. And so that's also a conflict of interest. They're very easily tampered with, and that's what the 1% manual tally, after, I think it's the 2008 or 2004 election, Mara Brown, who was the Secretary of State before Alex Padilla, she instituted this addendum in the election code law saying, if we're going to make sure that nothing is being tampered with, we need to have a 1% manual tally. And what Michael Vu has been doing for the past 9 years is he's just been doing vote by mail ballots that came in before election day, or the early voting, which, are probably for Hillary Clinton, because, that's the demographic that would vote early or vote by mail. And not to even mention all of the voter suppression that happened on election day, where 74,000 provisional ballots, which is 10% more provisional ballots that are normally cast in any sort of election. Poll workers were deliberately undertrained, understaffed, to give provisional ballots anytime there was any question of anything. Even registered Democratic voters were given their Democratic ballots were wrapped in provisional envelopes. And what happens with provisional ballots is it takes twice as long to verify the signature on them. So Michael Vu was trying to rush through this 1% manual tally without any provisional ballots. And guess who had provisional ballots? Every single poor neighborhood was given provisional ballots. Every single Latino neighborhood was given provisional ballots, and every single college student was given provisional ballots. So, populations that are overwhelmingly supportive of Bernie were all given provisional ballots, and he was trying to not include those in the 1% manual tally. And we have reports and documents that say in the original 1% manual tally, they only took about 9 precincts. And Bernie won 8 of those 9 precincts by large margins. And then they threw all of those out because they were like, oh, we're going to do batches now. We're not going to do precincts. And it's just this really weird, incompetent, flim-flam procedure that's happening in the Register of Voters in San Diego. It's just asinine. They're barring the public from watching them do ballots. We can actually see them on the ballot workers are actually instructed to move away from observers to the other side of this very large room, and they're told and they're whiting out ballots. We can see them whiting out ballots, and we finally got a journalist in there with a high-powered camera and we have photographic evidence that they are just writing out Bernie's name on all of these provisional ballots. That's the skinny.
Yeah, it's pretty fat. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I saw some footage. I don't even know where to begin with all that
I
you've
know.
told
I'm
us.
just like, yeah.
But let's
there's
get to
so
the
much
whiting
more
out.
than that, too.
Let's get to the
Yeah.
whiting out part of the process. I saw a
Yeah.
clip. It must have been through one of your streams or one of your team streams,
Yeah.
where this operative, this employee, very coolly explains that's how it's done if you've accidentally gotten a ballot with the president on it.
Oh yeah, and it's all their opinion, and they call it misvoting. It's just like you're not in the right precinct, you're not on the roster, and lo and behold, who's in charge of putting names on rosters? It's the Registrar of Voters. So there's like absolutely like no quality control whatsoever. They basically just have a free reign on purging people from rosters, and that was a problem for a lot of people who had to vote provisionally, or people who were registered as vote by mail, and they came in not realizing they were registered vote by mail, so there so many dirty tactics to get people to vote provisionally, and then they're writing out ballots. They're writing out Bernie Sanders ballots, and what they're saying is, okay, so I'm like a ballot expert. Like I'm an elections expert now. Elections, like in the primary elections, they're like, or in any election at the Registrar of Voters, you have about 4 or 5 different rooms. You have the 1% annual tally room. You have a room where they are, they're verifying signatures on, provisionals and vote by mail. And they, and then they have like a tabulation room. And one of the rooms that they have is a ballot remake room. So if your ballot is damaged or in any way, hard to read for the optical scanners, what they're legally required to do is remake your ballot in front of witnesses and have it, match your ballot exactly. Like, or if you mail in a ballot and you like spilt coffee on it or something, or somehow damaged, they're supposed to remake that ballot. It is absolutely illegal for anyone to put any sort of extra marking on your ballot to fill in a bubble or anything. So what they're doing is they're writing out bubbles. They're saying, oh, well, this person isn't qualified to vote in this central committee election. Like, if you live in like La Mesa or El Cajon, which are like suburbs of separate cities from San Diego, which are like suburbs of San Diego, you're not eligible to vote for the mayor of El Cajon if you live in, San Diego. Like that's their bullshit excuse. It is absolutely illegal to white out a ballot. And we kind of held their feet to the fire and we're like, yeah, so we know it's illegal for you to alter any sort of original ballot. And what they're saying is, oh, well, this person, in our personal opinion, misvoted. And it's totally legal to use whiteout on this original ballot because this ballot can be resurrected. Like,
what?
What are you talking about? Yeah, exactly. What? What are you talking about? Absolutely. Like, Ray Lutz has been watching elections for years. He's our local expert, and he's never ever seen them. And he's like seen a lot of shady stuff. He's never ever seen or heard of ballot resurrection. This is like they're just pulling this out of their asses. Like, ballot resurrection, what are you talking about? How are we supposed to resurrect these ballots that have whiteout all over them? Like, and they're not notifying. There's no notification to voters that their vote didn't count. And and it's so shady too. They won't let us into any of the rooms, but we can see from this like tiny little window, 5 feet away, and they have one tabulator machine right next to the window. And what they started doing was they whited out these ballots. We can see them whiting out ballots. Like, there shouldn't be whiteout anywhere near ballots, anywhere, at any point in time. We found whiteout in 3 separate rooms. And when we went to the tabulator room where they actually run it through the optical scanner, they're purposely putting these ballots through the optical scanner with the presidential side down. So our observers can't see that they're writing out Bernie Sanders' name. They're writing out write-ins. Like, how are you supposed to resurrect these ballots that are write-in ballots? And in some counties, like we're suing right now to make sure those write-ins count. Because voter intent is like the letter of the law. Like, that's what should count. but they're just like, oh, well, the parties make the rules, even though the taxpayers pay for the election. Parties make the rules. And, when I first served Michael Vu, I was like, why is he coming out here? We're the public. We're here to serve the public servant, unless, somebody else is paying him, which is what I'm pretty sure is going on. I think he's just bought and paid for.
Now, Asa, has anything of that scope happened in North Carolina to your knowledge?
Not that I can tell, but there have been shady things in the past.
Because this is like an expose. I mean, are you going to be writing any article about this, Maggie?
I can. I'm actually meeting with the lawyers. We just got done with dinner. I'm going to be meeting with them tomorrow. Right now we're just like gathering evidence, which is kind of like a feat in and of itself, because like there's no shortage of testimony to gather. Because coupled with all of the illegal things, all of the incompetent irregularities at the polling stations, there's also all these horrible things that they're doing while they're counting ballots. Like the main thing being they're barring public access to watch these ballots be counted. Like, if I were Michael Vu and I had been indicted for election fraud, like, and then I magically got a job in Southern California, wouldn't it be your prerogative to make sure everything was above board? You didn't look like a shady shyster, but that's not the case. They're just, day by day, it's gotten worse, and especially after the lawsuit.
This guy must be like Chinese triad or something. I don't know.
Well, his Ohio episodes are his resume. That's why he was imported. Yeah. I was curious about the kind of, let's call it, public visibility this action is getting. I know there was a press conference. I believe it took place before or after a meeting of the registrars yesterday. Am I saying that correctly?
There's the registrar of voters there. We've had a couple of press conferences, and like maybe one local news station showed up, and they kind of sent like their dinosaur reporter out the door, and they're like, go cover this. So they didn't get a whole, like, it got like a little, like 2-minute clip on like the local evening news, but like really nobody has picked up on it, except, on Facebook, where we were just like, yeah, people are going to be pissed. Let's like hashtag this and share it on all the big Bernie groups. And that's how it spread like wildfire, because people are pissed, and rightfully so. We had a press conference today after the hearing. And that was once we got lawyers involved. Like, we have this legal team from San Francisco, and it's a lot of like volunteer lawyers who are like really sympathetic to the cause. They've volunteered for Bernie Sanders in the past, and they sent out this press release, and they just really hammered the mainstream media. We have a lawyer who, her name's Dwana. Gosh, I can't remember her last name off the top of my head.
Is it Bain?
Maybe. I know her first name's Dwana, D-W-A-N.
Yeah, it's Dwana.
She's
Bain.
a civil rights attorney. Yeah. Please go on.
Yeah, she's awesome. She used to be a reporter, actually, so she knew how to like write the press release. She hit the wire, which is like just the basic like AP formula for getting the news out. She hit the wire, and then she hit all of these mainstream media news outlets. So we got a little bit more coverage. We got like Fox and CBS that are local, the local ones, to come cover the hearing. And we haven't gone to trial yet. We're just like seeking an injunction to make sure this is like one of 2 lawsuits. This is a lawsuit that Alan Garachi is filing with Ray Letts, and then Bill Simpich and his legal team are filing another lawsuit to make sure that they follow voter intent. And this one, the one that we had a hearing for today, that's just to make sure that they include provisionals and late mail-in ballots in the 1% manual tally. It's so frustrating because earlier when they did the 1% manual tally, they only did like half of 1% manual tally. And so they're supposed to pull like 15 precincts to do the manual tally, or 15 batches, and they'd only pulled 9, which I don't know how that they thought they were going to get away with that with all the Bernie eyes on them. And Bernie won 8 out of those 9 precincts. It's ridiculous. And then, when we came back later, and this was before the lawsuit, and they were all happy-go-lucky, and they, actually printed us out the results. So you can see that, of all the counties, Hillary Clinton only won by, half of a percentage in one of the counties, or one of the precincts. I'm sorry. So, and then, when we came back later, according to the manual tally, Bernie won 58% to 41%. And then when we came back later after the lawsuit, after they had, gotten close, they haven't certified, but they declared that all the counting is done.
I wanted to ask about that. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but
no.
Our good friend Secretary Padilla, maintains that fabulously simple website, and it says now, and perhaps has for some while, that only percentages are reporting, but there'll be no further updating. Now, is that tantamount to certifying, or is this?
No. Well, what certifying, I am not completely clear on what certification is. I do know, once it's certified, all these ballots get sealed, and we can't see what they did to them, which they put a bunch of whiteout on them with impunity in front of observers, what little we could see. I do understand that it is a lot harder to get them to do anything once it's certified. Once it's certified, we can't go back and have that 1% audit, redone. Bill Simpich, he put it as, we all kind of have these superpowers until the 7th, 30 days after the primary election. They can follow policy, and that's what they did in L.A. County, I believe. In L.A. County, they were okay, you guys are here, you're watching us, we're going to honor voter. I could be mistaken. I'm not sure if it was L.A. County. It might have been a different county, where they were we're going to honor voter intent. So we're going to count the write-ins. We're going to count the provisional ballots. We're not, nobody else is whiting anything out. It's just so bizarre and illegal that they're whiting stuff out. It's so bizarre. So certification, I do understand it's a lot harder to get.
That in addition to the shredding truck?
Oh, right. Oh, my God. See, that's what I'm talking about. There's just so much shit that is going down, and we're just are you guys serious? So we have.
Yeah, Cheesecake Factory strikes again. Oh, yeah, we got her back.
And then, so we're having, finally, it got picked up by some attorneys. I called Lori Grace. I forget which, I think she works for election integrity. I forget who Lori Grace works for, but she's an advocate for election integrity. I think it might be rigged election, but I called her. I was desperate. It was just screaming into the abyss. I'm he is fucking robbing us blind. And there are no grown-ups to listen to me. And I was somebody please come help us. I was tweeting all of these Bernie celebs, and I just wasn't getting any notice, no notice at all. And finally, I called Lori Grace, and she put me in contact with Bill Simpich and Robert Fertrakis. Fertrakis? I don't know. And Bill Simpich was Lori Grace, she called me the other day, and she was just I just want to thank you for everything you're doing, and the reason I put Bill in contact with you is because you just sounded so desperate. You just sounded so scared and desperate. There was just so much worry and concern in your voice that I took it really seriously and got you in contact with Bill Simpich. So we are finally able to have these civil rights attorneys descend on San Diego, and finally we're just okay, we're not by ourselves anymore. This ragtag team of grassroots volunteers. We have civil pretty great civil rights attorneys helping us out, and because before we had these attorneys, we Ray Lutz filed a suit by himself. We had no legal expertise. I did mock trial in high school, but Ray Lutz wrote the lawsuit on his own, and then it got picked up pro bono by Alan Garachi, who's a really great attorney. local in San Diego. And I finally got a hold of Bill Simpich, who works up in the Bay Area. He's a civil rights attorney in the Bay Area. And he had this network of other lawyers who are willing to help out too. So that's been really great, getting to know them and seeing them in action and helping them gather data for the lawsuit. And we just the problem is we have too much evidence of malfeasance in San Diego County. It's just this perfect storm of it's one of the biggest counties. It's not the biggest, but it's one of the biggest. And we have Michael Vu, who has this track record of really shady election practices. Pretty much all of the tactics that we're reporting seeing, people were reporting in 2004 in Cuyahoga, Ohio.
Well, didn't Faulkner run on some kind of transparency platform? He needs to be pressured then to get rid of this guy at the very least.
I know. I mean, the problem is with Michael Vu, he's not an elected official. He was hired by the executive administrative officer of San Diego County. I mean, I used to be a preschool teacher, and if I drop a kid on their head, I probably am not going to be a preschool teacher anymore. But Michael Vu is indicted. He was investigated for election fraud, and he didn't get convicted, but the two women who worked directly underneath him were convicted and fired and got healthy severance packages and can never work in government ever again. But Michael Vu kind of just falls off the radar. And then in 2007, he gets this job in San Diego County. And the way he was just the assistant, registrar of voters, assistant to the registrar of voters. And what happened was his boss, her name escapes me right now, but it was a big scandal. She had to resign because she got caught throwing away mail-in ballots. Somebody found them in the trash, and they're excuse me, these are ballots that you're throwing away. And she resigned in disgrace, and then Michael Vu stepped into her job. So it's just this legacy of screwing.
Makes you wonder where she got hired.
Yeah, exactly. How are these people getting jobs? It's very strategic that they are in Southern California, and he was working. Wait, go ahead.
No, it's all interesting. I guess I just want to try to get a sense of what the deadline for certification, which I believe you said is tomorrow, how that plays with the suit, and has the suit in fact been filed?
Yes, the suit has been filed. This injunction has been filed, and hopefully, the judge is really overworked. He actually it was interesting. This judge, it's Joel something. I cannot remember what his last name is, but his first name is Joel. But he was saying that he was can you guys please call your elected officials and tell them that the civil cases are the civil courts are just inundated, and we just cannot keep up with all the civil court cases. And I was hopeful because I was cool, this guy doesn't elected officials either. But he was I'm just so overworked. We have so many cases. I was not able to review all the documents, so I'm going to take this case under submission, which means I guess he needs a little bit. He heard the case, he heard opening arguments and some rebuttals back and forth and closing arguments, and he's going to look at all of the briefs that we've collected, and he's going to consider them, and then hopefully by tonight or tomorrow he will ratify the injunction, and they can't certify the election, which gives us a little bit more time for us to do the 1% manual tally to completion, because they only did about they only did half of a manual tally. They didn't include provisionals or late vote by mail. They didn't include provisionals because provisionals take a little bit longer to verify the signatures and verify that that voter didn't vote twice. That's the only reason provisionals are kind of a pain in the ass. But our lawyer said in court today, Michael Vu, the Register of Voters, created this problem by handing out all of these provisional, 74,000 provisional ballots. So, it's not our fault that you guys handed out all these provisional ballots, that so many people weren't on the rosters. That's on you guys. You created the problem, And another thing that I noticed that's the difference between the LA County registrar of voters and the San Diego County is Los Angeles. It's bigger, but like I don't think it's that much bigger than San Diego. Like it's a huge county. But they have, in each of their rooms, they have like 50 plus people working on the ballots, making sure everything gets counted, making sure everything's, processed. And if you go to San Diego, they've got like 4 octogenarians like looking at the computer screen, going at a snail's pace. And I'm just like, how in the world is this like an okay thing to do for such an important election to be so understaffed? It's infuriating.
Does that mirror your experiences, Asa, in North Carolina, as far as it just being a debacle?
Yeah, it's more than a debacle. It's just like straight up fraud. Like, if they weren't committing, election code crimes, they would let the public in to watch what they're doing. But they can't do that. Like, we've kind of, we've been watching from afar because they only let us look through this one perspective, this one window that we can look through. And even then, like, they're fucking using whiteout on our ballots, dude. They're nullifying votes. And at that point, the ballots have been taken out of envelopes. So there's no way they can notify voters. Like, it's asinine that they're like, oh, well, we're going to tell these people that they misvoted and then they can come in and like ratify their vote. Like, that's nonsense, because at the point where they are whiting out ballots, like the identifying envelope has been tossed already. Like, there's no way to tell whose ballot that is that you're whiting out. Like, it's just provisionals that they're whiting out.
Right. They're gaslighting us, resurrecting a ballot that admits they've killed it. But I wanted to ask you, so for those of us who aren't attorneys, the injunction is the preamble to a suit, and if that's accurate, is Michael Vu the target?
Yeah, like, it's Michael Vu. It's Michael Vu's boss, and it's the city of San Diego. It's the county in San Diego that we're suing. So, like, his legal representation is the city council, like, council with an S. Like, the city attorneys are being sued, and they're defending the city, or the county, rather. So, yeah, it's the registrar, it's the city. And that's just the one that Alan Garachi and Ray Lust have filed. There's another lawsuit that Bill Simpich has filed, and he's also filed it's like he's roped in Alameda and Fresno, because Alameda and Fresno, like, maybe not outright fraudsters, like they don't have like a Michael Vu in Alameda or Fresno, but it's just like there's just like, it's raging incompetence. Like, they're just not following the letter of the law. They're not. It's insane. Like, they're also being very negligent in their ability to do, the 1% manual tally to make sure, nothing funny is going on with the machines that are tallying them. So that's the lawsuit that builds it. I'm not totally clear on the legal nomenclature. I just know that what the injunction is going to do is stop them from certifying the election, so we can maybe get in there, or at least force them to do an entire 1% manual tally, which I believe would be like 15 districts.
Let me ask
15 precincts.
Let me ask you this. I have a strong conviction that more public visibility, meaning more attendees at your press conferences, et cetera, could only be a benefit. Is there like a scheduled event tomorrow? If so, what and where?
Gosh, like, we were just discussing that at dinner, like, what is the next step? So we are, like, gathering testimony for, like, poll workers, for, witnesses at polling stations, witnesses, at the register of voters who are watching them, do this gross negligence of whiting out. What we could really use help with is reaching out to these ballot workers, and asking these ballot workers to, contact us and maybe give us some of, because like what we need is for these ballot workers to be like, yeah, Michael Vu or his immediate subordinates are telling us to white out these ballots. Like we need testimony from ballot workers. So that's our smoking gun, is to get these ballot workers to tell us what's going on inside the register of voters.
And I'm sure Michael Vu gave you a list of who those workers were, or?
Nope. They just stopped answering our questions a long time ago. Like, that's another election code violation. Like, if you look up election code 2300, section 9A and B, they are legally bound to answer our questions. And especially after we served the lawsuit papers, he instructed his staff to not answer any of our questions. Like, I couldn't even get this woman's last name the other day. She was like, you need to submit a written request for any question you have, and that has to go directly to Michael Vu. And it takes us about 10 days to get a reply from Michael Vu for any questions that we ask.
They think they're going to make you give up.
Yeah, oh no, but like the more they do this, the more pissed we get. So, yeah. I mean, it's just every single thing that they can do to roadblock us, they've done. So, I mean, I asked a really long time ago for, the other thing is that, like, there's just, like, you would think that there's, like, a chain of custody for your ballots. Like, you cast your ballot, it goes into the ballot box. But those ballot workers, like, they're not paid. They get, like, a very small stipend. And then a lot of times what they're doing is they're, like, super under-trained. A lot of times what they're doing is they're supposed to steal a bag of ballots and, have the sheriff come collect all of your ballots, or at least drive them to, like, a central location, like a collection center, and the sheriff transports them, because, ballots are very precious, and have the sheriff transport from the collection center to the register of voters. And what we're finding is, excuse me, that's not at all what happened. Like, ballot workers are, like, hard.